What if I told you the reason your groceries are 20% more expensive in 2026 has nothing to do with what you think? It's not just inflation, it's not just supply chain issues, and it's definitely not temporary. Because right now, behind the scenes, the entire global food system is quietly being rewritten, and you're paying for it every single time you walk into a store. Prices aren't rising randomly. They're being pushed up by a combination of forces that most people never see and even fewer understand. And here's the part no one is talking about. This isn't the peak. In fact, what we're experiencing right now may only be the beginning of a much bigger shift, one that could permanently change how much you pay for food and how you survive financially. So if you've been wondering why your money suddenly doesn't stretch as far as it used to, or why the same basket keeps getting smaller while the price keeps going up, stay with me, because once you see what's really happening, you'll never look at your grocery bill the same way again.
The silent price shock. Walk into any grocery store in 2026 and something feels off. The same basket you used to fill without thinking now forces you to pause, calculate, and sometimes put items back. Prices didn't just rise, they shifted your behavior. And the scariest part? This isn't temporary. Over the past year, grocery prices have surged by around 20% in many regions. But this isn't the kind of inflation we saw before, where prices spike and eventually cool down. This time, the increase is sticking. It's becoming the new normal. At first glance, it's easy to blame inflation as a general concept, but that explanation is too shallow. What's happening in 2026 is the result of multiple deep-rooted systems breaking down at the same time.
Start with supply chains. During the early 2020s, global supply chains were stretched to their limits. While things briefly stabilized, they never fully recovered. Instead, companies shifted toward more resilient systems, local sourcing, backup suppliers, and redundancy. Sounds good, right? But resilience comes at a cost. Companies are now spending more just to avoid future disruptions, and those costs are passed directly to you. Then there's energy. Food production depends heavily on fuel. Tractors, transportation, refrigeration, and processing all rely on it. Energy prices have remained volatile, and even small increases ripple through the entire food system. When fuel costs rise, everything from bread to vegetables becomes more expensive.
Labor is another major factor. Farms, warehouses, and grocery stores are facing persistent labor shortages. To attract workers, wages have increased. While higher wages are good for workers, they also raise operating costs, which again show up on your receipt. But here's where it gets more concerning. These factors aren't temporary disruptions, they're structural changes. The system that once delivered cheap, abundant food is evolving into something more expensive and less predictable. And consumers are starting to feel it in real ways. People are switching brands, buying in smaller quantities, and cutting out non-essentials. Some are even skipping meals or relying on cheaper, less nutritious options.
What makes this situation different is the psychological shift. Groceries used to be one of the most stable parts of your budget. Now they feel uncertain. You can't predict what things will cost next month, and that uncertainty creates stress. The 20% increase you're seeing isn't just about numbers. It's about a fundamental change in how food is produced, distributed, and priced. And if current trends continue, this may only be the beginning. Because behind the scenes, even bigger forces are building. Forces that could push prices even higher in the months ahead.
The real drivers behind rising food costs. To truly understand why groceries are becoming more expensive, you have to look beyond the store shelves and into the systems that bring food to your table.
What you're seeing in 2026 is the result of multiple pressure points hitting the food industry at once. One of the biggest drivers is climate instability. Farming has always depended on predictable weather patterns, but those patterns are becoming less reliable. Droughts, floods, and extreme temperatures are reducing crop yields across the world. When supply drops and demand stays the same, prices go up. It's that simple. But it doesn't stop there. Even when crops are successfully grown, getting them to market has become more complicated.
Transportation networks are under strain, with delays, higher fuel costs, and increased maintenance expenses. Transportation networks are under strain, with delays, higher fuel costs, and increased maintenance expenses. Every extra cost along the journey adds a few more cents to the final price you pay. Another major factor is fertilizer. Modern agriculture depends heavily on fertilizers to maintain high yields. However, fertilizer prices have risen sharply due to supply disruptions and increased production costs. Farmers are now paying significantly more just to grow the same amount of food. Naturally, those costs are passed down the chain. There's also the issue of consolidation. A small number of large corporations control significant portions of the food supply chain, from production to distribution. When these companies face higher costs or choose to increase margins, the effects are felt everywhere. With less competition, there's less pressure to keep prices low.
Currency fluctuations are another hidden factor. Many countries rely on imports for certain foods. When currencies weaken, imported goods become more expensive. Even locally produced food can be affected if inputs like machinery or chemicals are imported. Then there's packaging. It might seem minor, but packaging costs have risen due to higher prices for materials like plastic, paper, and aluminum. These costs are small individually, but when applied across millions of products, they significantly impact overall prices. All of these factors are interconnected. When one part of the system experiences stress, it creates a ripple effect. When multiple parts are under pressure at the same time, those ripples turn into waves.
What makes 2026 unique is that these pressures are happening simultaneously. It's not just one problem, it's a combination of many, all reinforcing each other. And perhaps the most important thing to understand is that none of these issues have quick fixes. Climate patterns won't stabilize overnight. Supply chains won't suddenly become cheaper. Labor shortages won't disappear instantly. This means the higher prices you're seeing are not just a temporary spike. They are part of a longer-term shift in how the global food system operates. And if these trends continue, the next phase could be even more challenging for consumers.
Why prices aren't coming down anytime soon? Many people are waiting for grocery prices to go back to normal. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Normal, as we knew it, may no longer exist. The forces driving prices upward aren't fading, they're becoming permanent features of the system. One major reason is cost stickiness. When businesses raise prices due to higher costs, they rarely reduce them even if those costs later stabilize. Instead, they maintain higher prices to protect profit margins and prepare for future uncertainties. Another factor is consumer adaptation. As people adjust to higher prices, companies face less pressure to lower them. If customers continue buying, just in smaller quantities or different brands, there's no strong incentive for prices to drop significantly.
There's also the issue of long-term contracts. Many suppliers and retailers lock in pricing agreements months or even years in advance. These contracts reflect current high costs, meaning elevated prices will persist even if conditions improve slightly. Technology, which many hoped would reduce costs, is actually increasing them in the short term. Automation, data systems, and advanced logistics require massive investments. Companies are spending heavily to modernize operations, and those expenses are passed on to consumers. Debt is another hidden factor. Many companies took on significant debt during earlier economic disruptions. Now, with higher interest rates, servicing that debt has become more expensive. To cover these costs, businesses raise prices.
At the same time, governments are implementing stricter regulations around food safety, environmental impact, and labor practices.
While these regulations are important, they also increase compliance costs for producers and retailers. Then there's the psychological aspect of pricing. Once consumers accept a new price level, it becomes the baseline. A loaf of bread that used to cost one amount now costs significantly more, and over time, that new price feels normal, even if it's objectively higher. What's happening is a reset of expectations. The era of consistently cheap groceries is fading, replaced by a more expensive and volatile system. And there's another layer to this. Global demand for food is increasing as populations grow and diets change.
More people are consuming resource-intensive foods, which puts additional pressure on supply. All of these factors combine to create a situation where prices don't just rise, they stay elevated. So when you look at your grocery bill and wonder when things will improve, the answer isn't simple. Prices might stabilize, but a significant drop is unlikely in the near future. Instead, consumers will need to adapt to this new reality, finding ways to manage costs while navigating an increasingly unpredictable food landscape. Because what's coming next could reshape not just how much you pay, but how you shop entirely. How consumer behavior is changing. As grocery prices continue to rise, people aren't just spending more, they're changing how they shop, what they buy, and even how they think about food. This shift in behavior is one of the clearest signs that the system is undergoing a long-term transformation. One of the most noticeable changes is downtrading. Consumers are switching from premium brands to cheaper alternatives, store brands, or bulk options. Quality is often sacrificed for affordability, and brand loyalty is weakening. Another shift is reduced consumption. People are buying fewer items, cutting back on snacks, and prioritizing essentials. Items that were once considered normal purchases are now seen as luxuries.
Meal planning has also become more strategic. Instead of spontaneous shopping, consumers are planning meals in advance to minimize waste and control costs. This shift reflects a more calculated approach to spending. There's also a growing interest in local and alternative food sources. Some consumers are turning to farmers markets, community-supported agriculture, or even growing their own food. While these options aren't accessible to everyone, they represent a desire for more control over food costs. Technology is playing a role as well. Price comparison apps, digital coupons, and online shopping tools are becoming essential for budget-conscious consumers. People are investing more time and effort into finding the best deals.
At the same time, there's an emotional impact. Shopping for groceries used to be routine, but now it can feel stressful. Constant price increases create uncertainty and anxiety, especially for households with tight budgets. Another important trend is substitution. When certain items become too expensive, consumers replace them with cheaper alternatives. This can lead to changes in diet, sometimes reducing nutritional quality. Bulk buying is also increasing, but it comes with challenges. While buying in bulk can save money, it requires upfront cash and storage space, something not everyone has. These behavioral changes are reshaping the market itself. As demand shifts, companies adjust their offerings, focusing more on value-oriented products and smaller package sizes. What's interesting is that these changes can reinforce higher prices. For example, when consumers buy smaller quantities, the cost per unit often increases. This creates a cycle where attempts to save money can sometimes lead to higher overall costs. The grocery store of 2026 is no longer just a place to buy food. It's a place where economic pressures are felt in real time. And as these behaviors become more widespread, they signal something deeper. People are not expecting prices to return to previous levels. Instead, they are adapting to a new normal, one where managing food costs requires constant attention and strategy.
The hidden forces still pushing prices higher. Even after a 20% increase, grocery prices may not have reached their peak. There are still underlying forces building momentum, and many of them are not immediately visible to consumers. One of these forces is geopolitical tension. Trade disruptions, sanctions, and conflicts can limit the flow of key food products and agricultural inputs. When supply chains are disrupted at a global level, prices respond quickly. Another factor is water scarcity. Agriculture depends heavily on water,
and shortages are becoming more common in many regions. Reduced water availability limits production and increases costs for farmers. There's also the issue of soil degradation. Over time, intensive farming practices have reduced soil quality, making it harder to maintain high yields without additional inputs. This increases reliance on fertilizers and other costly solutions.
Energy transitions are another hidden driver. As the world shifts toward cleaner energy, traditional fuel systems are becoming more expensive due to reduced investment. This creates short-term cost increases that affect food production and transportation. Insurance costs are rising as well. Extreme weather events have made farming riskier, leading to higher insurance premiums for producers. These costs are ultimately passed on to consumers. Labor dynamics continue to evolve. Migration patterns, demographic changes, and shifting workforce expectations are all affecting the availability and cost of labor in the food industry. There's also an increasing focus on sustainability. While environmentally friendly practices are important, they often come with higher costs. Organic farming, reduced emissions, and ethical sourcing all add to the price of food.
Financial markets play a role too. Speculation in commodity markets can drive price volatility, sometimes pushing prices higher even without immediate supply shortages. All of these factors are interconnected, creating a complex system where multiple pressures reinforce each other. This makes it difficult to predict exactly how prices will move, but the overall direction remains upward. What's particularly concerning is that many of these forces are long-term in nature. They are not problems that can be solved quickly or easily. This means that the current price levels may not just persist, they could continue to rise. For consumers, this creates a challenging environment. Budgeting becomes more difficult, and financial planning requires more flexibility. Understanding these hidden forces is important because it shifts the perspective. Instead of seeing price increases as random or temporary, it becomes clear that they are part of a broader transformation. And as these forces continue to develop, they will shape the future of food in ways that are only beginning to become visible.
What this means for your future. The rising cost of groceries isn't just a short-term inconvenience, it's a signal of deeper economic changes that will affect how you live, spend, and plan for the future. First, it means that food will take up a larger portion of household budgets. What used to be a manageable expense is becoming a significant financial consideration. This shift forces difficult trade-offs, especially for lower and middle-income households. Second, it highlights the importance of financial adaptability. Fixed budgets are becoming less effective in a world where essential costs are constantly changing. Flexibility and planning are now critical skills. Third, it suggests that self-sufficiency may become more valuable. Whether it's learning to cook more efficiently, reducing waste, or exploring alternative food sources, individuals are being pushed to take a more active role in managing their consumption. There's also a broader economic implication. When people spend more on groceries, they have less money for other goods and services. This can slow economic growth and affect businesses across multiple sectors. At the same time, inequality may increase. Higher-income households can absorb rising costs more easily, while others face greater financial strain. This creates a widening gap in access to quality food and nutrition. Technology may eventually provide solutions, but those solutions will take time. Innovations in agriculture, logistics, and food production could help stabilize prices in the long run, but they won't offer immediate relief. Policy decisions will also play a role. Governments may introduce subsidies, price controls, or other measures to manage food costs. However, these interventions come with their own challenges and limitations.
For individuals, the key takeaway is awareness. Understanding why prices are rising helps you make better decisions and avoid being caught off guard. It's also important to recognize that this is a global issue. While the exact impact varies by region, the underlying trends are affecting food systems worldwide. The 20% increase you're seeing today may not be the end of the story. It could be the beginning of a longer period of adjustment, where prices continue to evolve in response to changing conditions. Ultimately, the way you approach food, how you buy it, use it, and think about it, is likely to change. And while that may seem unsettling, it also presents an opportunity to become more intentional and resilient in the face of economic uncertainty. Because in 2026 and beyond, groceries are no longer just a routine expense. They are a reflection of a world that is rapidly changing.
At this point, it's clear. This isn't just about higher grocery prices. It's about a system that's changing in real time. The 20% increase you're seeing today isn't a temporary spike. It's a signal, a warning that the era of cheap, predictable food is fading, and something far more expensive and uncertain is taking its place. And the truth is, most people are still waiting for prices to go back to normal. But what if this is the new normal? What if the rules have already changed and we're just slow to realize it? Because the people who adapt early, who understand what's happening and adjust how they spend, buy, and think, are the ones who will stay ahead. Everyone else, they'll keep feeling like they're falling behind, no matter how much they earn. So the next time you walk into a grocery store and see those higher prices, don't just see numbers, see the shift. Because once you understand it, you can start to move differently in a world where food is no longer cheap and never will be again.